of the spectacles of that company and that facility is the ever popular book signing. Can you recall for us over the years some of the more interesting signings in your memory?
Well, the Nick Pileggi did Casino when he came in. We had judges, lawyers, mob guys. It was a microcosm of society was in the store. I'm talking about guys who had handcuffs on, who put handcuffs on people, judges, and everything. They were lined up pretty good outside the store. And that was when Andy Beyer, the great horse player, who wrote at least 10 books, I think, on horse racing, and he's revered in the horse racing industry. When he came in, very charismatic guy. They were lined up around the store like you'd take a number in a bakery. They wanted to chat with him. They wanted to ask him questions. There are certain people who the betting public really, really respects, and they will come in not so much for the autograph, but ask questions and to it's like shaking a politician's hand. Maybe they think maybe the touch will give them some power that they have as well, or inspire them. Those were two of the biggest ones, and then. There was an author who wrote a great book on Meyer Lansky. The book was called Little Man. This was 25 years ago, so I'm a little rusty on his name, but he's a famous British author, and when he came in, a lot of people came in, and including one guy who claimed he was a relative of Lansky. So people want to ask these different questions of people who are famous. Oh, you know who I met, this and that, and so on. They like that kind of stuff, and a lot of the people who write books on gambling want to come down to the store and do it. They don't want to do it at a Barnes and Noble because the population's a little diluted as far as how many gamblers shop at Barnes and Noble for gambling books. So they want to be in an atmosphere where they feel comfortable and there's other gamblers around them. In fact, that is the way the store got its name, Gamblers Book Club. And then later on it became Gamblers Book Shop and Gamblers Book Club, because the boss, John Luckman, believe it or not, that was his name.
I was going to ask you about that, Luckman.
He wanted to have a place where all gamblers felt comfortable and they could sit there and chat and argue and exchange ideas and so on. And they couldn't do this in a regular bookstore or in a coffee shop because they'd be looked down on or something. But amidst the atmosphere, of a friendly atmosphere of the bookstore, it fit. We had to change it from club to shop a little bit because people thought you needed a membership card to get in or something like that. And who would get the membership card? The FBI would find out about it.
Well, let me ask you about that. You bring up an interesting topic, the stereotype that surrounds gambling. And I'm thinking about poker now. With the emergence of poker being a mainstream game on television, the World Series of Poker, more and more people are playing it. It's more acceptable nowadays. Do you think that stereotype is erasing itself from, say, 40, 50 years ago? Or is it still there in an underlying fashion?
Well, it's still there a little bit. Depends on what Hollywood and television does. They start talking about breaking guys' knees if they don't pay and this and that stuff. But it's, I think the really rough, tough stereotype of the gambler as a mob guy or, somebody just got out of prison and led a crooked life, that's not there anymore. I think you've got, in fact, in the last 10, 15 years, I've seen more books come out that talk about gambling like a stock market event than anything else. They're teaching you how to manage your money, percentage of bankroll betting, and not putting your whole bankroll in jeopardy at the same time. They recommend 3 to 5% bets. You don't bet at all just because you got to get even, that type of a thing. And you're seeing a lot of ex-stock market people get into poker and sports betting and horse racing, and some of them dabble on both sides. In fact, when I mentioned Ken Houston, he was a former vice president of the Pacific Stock Exchange at the age of 27.
This is the guy that you see all over YouTube on how he beats the game of blackjack.
Yes, he was a genius of disguise and mathematics and so on, and he probably stimulated more people to play blackjack than anybody else because he showed there was a way of doing it. And he formed teams, of course. They weren't always successful in the long run because there was always a weak link in there, or the other side, the countermeasure, the casinos began to get a little smarter on what was going on as far as signals and good counts and deck penetration and so on. But there were guys counting cards in the 50s. They were just very quiet. I'll tell you a crazy story.
All right.
This one is, I don't remember the man's name, but he was from Boston, one of the great blackjack counters of the early 50s. And he went to, I think it might have been the Caribbean or Asia somewhere, and he won $500,000 playing poker. Now, not poker, but blackjack. He beat the table. It might have been Macau in those days. So at the airport, going home, they gave him all this money, of course, and winnings, and somebody tipped off the customs people and said, well, you can't take that money out of the country. So he had to decide what was he going to do, bury it, spend it all of a sudden, what? He went back and bought $500,000 worth of airline tickets, and then when he got back to the United States, cashed them all in. That's one way.
Ingenuity.
Yeah, it's... oh, by the way, we get magicians coming to the store, too, because there are a lot of books, magic and sleight of hand and cheating and the history of magic. They're all related in some ways, and the fascinating ways that people have tried to beat the game. And one guy told a story about they brought in, I think 10,000 playing cards, and they sold them for a penny. Each deck of cards was sold for almost nothing in Mexico in the 1930s or 40s, somewhere about that. And everybody bought them up at that price. You couldn't afford not to. So all the little joints, legal and illegal, whatever they had then, were using these playing cards. When a team of people came to town, every deck of cards was marked.
So they had the edge. Unbelievable. Hey, didn't Harry Houdini come into the store?
No, Houdini died in 26.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I thought I read something about him being in...
Vernon. Daivernon. That was his stage name. He was 93 when he came in, and two magicians brought him in from the West Coast, and he wanted to see some surveillance tapes or some slight moves by a very smart man by the name of Steve Forte, F-O-R-T-E, that's his real name. He has the greatest hands in the business, and when Vernon saw these surveillance tapes, at the age of 93, he fooled Houdini. He had a card trick that fooled Houdini in the 1920s. That's how far back he went. But Die Vernon broke out in applause at the age of 93, and I think it was very rarely done. But he is one of the most respected people in the business. I think Penn Jillette told me he was trained by, several others said that they were trained by the great Die Vernon.